must have dreamed 1,000 dreams, been haunted by a million screams, but I can hear the marching feet, been moving into the street. Now did you read the news today? They say the danger's gone away, but I can hear the fire still light. They're burning into the night. There's too many lives, too many people making too many problems. And there's not much left to go wrong. Can't you see this is a lot of confusion? This is the world we live in, and these are the hands we're given. Use them, let's not try to make it a place worth living. I won't be coming home tonight. My generation will put it right. We're not just making promises that we know we'll never keep. There's too many lives, too many people making too many problems, and there's not much left to go round. Tell me why this is a lot of confusion. Now this is the world we live in, and these are the hearts we give. Use them, let's start trying to make it a place worth fighting for. This is the world we live in, and these are the names we're given. Stand up and let's start showing just where our beliefs are going to. Hiya, Tony. Can you hear me good? I need a 5x5 on the sound. It's a bit chilly here. Yes, Tony. And you know what? So that got me thinking, right? And in the end, I got just a short video clip from Dane Wigington. And I started thinking, and I had to remember, because I had fallen down this rabbit hole some time ago, so I wanted to put it all together. Most people think Project Popeye was the beginning of the rainmaking, right? But not true. So, yeah, I dug around, and I was in Drop's office, and I was like, hey, check this out, right? So he's pulling stuff up, and he's like, whoa. So I tried to call into Marfugal last night. Hi, Mikey B. I tried to call into Marfugal last night, and I couldn't get through. So I was like, okay, guys, I'll just do a live tomorrow. Mikey, I hope everything's okay over the pond there, honey. So let's dive into this. Let me do the full screen. Is that full screen? Because people they don't really know the history. So I'm gonna bring up and read you an article. Okay, so I'm on another screen. I can't see you guys in the chat room. When San Diego hired a rainmaker a century ago, it poured. After Charles Hatfield began his work to wring water from the skies, San Diego experienced its wettest period in recorded history. As California endures its worst drought in 1,200 years, residents of the Golden State are turning to extreme, and despite measures to quench their collective thirst, sun-baked farmers are hiring water witches to divine underground water sources with forked branches, while a company called Rain on Request has pledged to end the drought by building electrical towers that would induce rainfall by ionizing the atmosphere. When California found itself in similar parched position exactly 100 years ago, the city of San Diego did something that seems even more bizarre. It hired a rainmaker. The thing is, it might have worked after Charles Mallory Hatfield began his work to wring water from the skies. San Diego experienced its wettest period in recorded history. So, was the rain an act of God or an act of Hatfield? I do not make rain. That would be an absurd claim. I simply attract clouds and they do the rest. Charles Hatfield. A century ago in 1915, as today, San Diego thirsted for water. Dangerously low reservoir levels threatened the region's potential to grow. Promoters of the city's Panama, California exposition, entering its second year, worried about the drought's impact on fair attendance. A civic organization, the San Diego Wide Awake Improvement Club, demanded action. Onto the arid stage and into San Diego City Council chamber on December 13th, 1915, stepped a potential saver, a dapper 40-year-old sewing machine salesman named Charles Mallory Hatfield, vowed to make it rain. As Barbara Toothill details in Hatfield the Rainmaker, the self-professed moisture accelerator told the counselors that he could have the Marina Reservoir only 1/3 full at the time, overflowing within a year for a fee of $10,000 to be paid only if he succeeded. Hatfield's path to San Diego started more than a decade earlier in nearby Bonsall. There, on his father's ranch, Hatfield conducted his first rainmaking experience from the top of a windmill tower. By 1904, he was able to convince some of California's water-starved ranchers and farmers that he could milk the skies by releasing a secret 23 chemical cocktail into the air from tall wooden towers perched on stilts. I do not make it rain, Hatfield said. That would be an absurd claim. I simply attract clouds and they do the rest. In December of 1904, he guaranteed Los Angeles business leaders that he could coax 18 inches of rain to fall over the ensuing 5 months in return for $1,000. When the target was eclipsed, the Rainmaker became a star. Hatfield immediately became the darling of excitement. Hungry newspapers and popular magazines, wrote scholar Clark C. Spence. Although a salesman by trade, Hatfield was no smooth-talking huckster. Born in a devout Quaker family, he had a polite, homespun manner. His piercing eyes were as blue as water, and his eerie pale skin suggested that he had little empathy for the sun. Hatfield's procedures, a scholar James Roger Fleming pointed out, Hatfield followed in the soggy footsteps of a line of scientists and pseudoscientists who claimed they could make the skies weep. The founding father of American Rainmaker was perhaps James Pollard Espy, the leading meteorologist of his day. According to Fleming, in his 1841 book, The Philosophy of Storms, Espy claimed that by moving humid air currents upward into the cooler layers of the atmosphere, condensation would occur and rain could be artificially induced. After being hired as the country's first federally funded meteorologist the following year, Espy tested his thermal theory of storms by intentionally setting forest fires to create massive updrafts, but the experiments fizzled along with his thesis. Plutarch noted that extraordinary rains pretty generally fall after great battles. Other pluviculturists, the term for pseudoscientists engaged in rainmaking, believed they could shoot the moisture out of the sky through shock and awe, a notion that dated back to Plutarch, who noted that extraordinary rains pretty generally fall after great battles in 1871's War and the Weather. Edward Power itemized more than 200 instances of participation fallen just after Civil War artillery engagements. The conclusive theory of rainmaking gained such traction that in the early 1890s, Congress appropriated nearly $20,000 to test it in drought-stricken Texas. Civil War veteran Robert St. George Dryenforth, who oversaw the experience, deployed his assistants as if he was going to war with the Great Blue Yonder. He assembled 3 battle lines that included 60 makeshift guns, kites bearing explosives, and balloons laden with a combustional mix of hydrogen and oxygen. When the experiments ultimately proved more successful in setting the prairie aflame than in making it rain, Dryenforth earned the mocking nickname Dry henceforth. Hatfield, the Rain Man. Hatfield graduated from yet another school of rainmaking that emerged in the 1890s, in which practitioners brewed secret chemical formulas that they burned in an attempt to produce fumes that would make clouds blossom into rain producers. By the time he made his offer to San Diego in 1915, Hatfield could point to 17 contracts he had signed with commercial entities, ranging from cotton growers in Texas to mine operators in Alaska. He commanded as much as $4,000 in return for the delivery of the 4-inch rainfall that he typically promised to municipalities across Southern California as a result of his chemical concoctions. San Diego's desperate city council was willing to give Hatfield the job, particularly because it would only have to pay out of the event that a deluge struck the city. Its heads, the city wins; tails, Hatfield loses, said Councilman Walter Moore after his fellow members verbally agreed to hire the Rainmaker. Only Councilman Herbert Fay objected to the deal, calling it rank foolishness. In the new year of 1916, Hatfield set off deep into the woods 60 miles east of the city and began construction of a 20-foot tower near the banks of Marina Reservoir. Even though he still lacked a signed contract as San Diego rang in the new year of 1916, Hatfield set off deep into the woods 60 miles east of the city and began construction of a 20-foot tower near the banks of the Marina Reservoir. He poured his rainmaking brew into the shallow iron pans, resting on a platform at the top of the wooden structure. Curiosity seekers reported that Hatfield set the fluids on fire and let the smoke drift skywards. One witness noticed that the noxious chemicals smelled as if a Limburger cheese factory had broken loose. When a light sprinkle christened the new year, a newspaper headline cheered, "Rainmaker Hatfield induces clouds to open." The rain grew steadier over the next couple of weeks, and then on January 15th, a biblical rain started to descend from the heavens. As much as 17 inches of rain fell in the mountains outside San Diego over the ensuing 5 days, as rejoicing quickly morphed into horror. The San Diego River leaped over its banks and ran a mile wide. Landslides oozed down saturated mountains. Floodwaters washed away nearly everything in the vicinity, including homes, roads, railroad tracks, telephone lines, and the entire community of Little Landers. Although rain was simultaneously dousing cities up and down the Pacific coastline, even skeptical San Diegans wondered if Hatfield indeed possessed Pluvian powers. "Let's pay Hatfield $10,000 to quit," quipped one property owner after he was rescued in a rowboat. The San Diego Union reported that Hatfield called City Hall to say, "Within the next few days, I expect to make it really rain." When asked if he was joking, he replied, "Never more serious in my life. Just hold your horses and I'll show you a real rain." By the time the epic rain stopped in San Diego County, nearly 30 inches had fallen in a month, making January 1916 the wettest period in the region's recorded history. Indeed, the drenching rains quickly returned after a brief respite, with deadly consequences. On January 27th, the mighty stone dam at the lower Otay Reservoir gave way, sending a 40-foot wall of weather thundering to the coastline. More than a dozen people died in the torrent that swept away all trees, livestock, and houses in its path. Okay, so that was, Hatfield's flood, with communication and transportation lines severed. Naval ships were required to ferry people and supplies in and out of San Diego. As promised by Hatfield, water lapped to the top of the Marina Reservoir, yet no one was particularly happy about it. Believing he had upheld his end of the bargain, the Rainmaker walked the 60-foot flood-stricken miles back to San Diego to collect his money, with city officials flooded with not only rain but also lawsuits seeking compensation for the resulting damage. City Attorney Terrence Cosgrove refused to pay Hatfield. That would make San Diego liable for the deluge in the eyes of the courts. Cosgrove denied payment on the basis that a contract was never inked, and that Hatfield could not furnish proof that the rain was of his own doing and not an act of God. The attorney did say he would be willing to pay the $10,000 if Hatfield took responsibility for the damages, but the Rainmaker refused and sued the city. The litigation dragged on for 2 decades before it was finally dismissed in 1938. Hatfield never received a dime from the city. San Diego didn't want to pay Hatfield, but others surely did. Over the next decade, he received offers from as far away as Cuba and Honduras, where he was hired to put out jungle fires to protect the country's banana crop. In 1921, he signed the biggest contract in his career, in excess of $25,000, to bring 5 inches of rain to Medicine Hat, Alberta, Canada. The Great Depression, however, decimated his business. Spending dried up and newly constructed dams improved civil water supplies. Not even the Dust Bowl could revive his rainmaking career. Hatfield briefly returned to the public eye in 1956 to attend the premiere of The Rainmaker, a Hollywood production loosely based on his life and starred Burt Lancaster and Katharine Hepburn. 2 years later, he died, taking a secret chemical formula to the grave. Hatfield was laid to rest under clear skies, just the type he would want to milk for rain. Critics claimed Hatfield was a huckster who merely benefited from coincidence. As Spence pointed out, many so-called rainmakers were little more than gamblers betting their time and what reputation they may have had that rain would fall while or after they commenced their machinations. By working only in the midst of dry spells, Hatfield could improve his odds of timing an impending rainfall indeed. Hatfield likely profited from his keen knowledge of meteorology and close examination of weather records. Knowing when storm fronts were imminent, he could target cities in advance of the rain and claim success when moisture fell from the skies. Others saw Hatfield as a forerunner of modern-day cloud seeding, in which chemicals such as dry ice and silver iodide, perhaps among those used by Hatfield, are introduced into cloud banks to foster the formation of ice crystals and raindrops. These chemicals provide particles around which water vapor can condense and eventually fall as rain once the droplets reach a sufficient size. The condensation process generates its own heat, which causes air to rise and fosters the growth of additional rain clouds. While Hatfield relied on the ascension of chemical vapors into the sky, Rainmaker went airborne with the advent of aircraft. The U.S. Army Air Service began experiments to determine if rain could be produced from electrified sand in 1921. However, the modern science of rainmaking truly began in 1947. I may bring up an article. 1947, I think, had some of the worst hurricane seasons on record. One of the worst. So at Project Cirrus, which we're going to go over Project Cirrus, that was in the 1947, a joint venture of General Electric and the U.S. military under the direction of Nobel laureate Irving Langmuir, that seeded clouds with dry ice. The results of Project Cirrus gave scientific credence to the mystic works of such pioneer rainmakers as California's now famous Charles Hatfield, wrote Donald D. Stark in the California Law Review. A century after Hatfield's exploits, the science of rainmaking and the effectiveness of cloud seeding remained points of contention. As Virginia Sims wrote in a 2010 article in the International Lawyer, even so, cloud seeding is on the rise. A 2014 report from the World Meteorological Organization found that 52 countries had active cloud seeding programs, up from 47 the previous year, and 39 weather modification programs were in place west of the Mississippi River. Even after its experience in 1915, San Diego continued to be seduced by the hope offered by rainmakers. Incredibly, in 1961, the city council considered hiring Edmund Jeffrey, who promised he could make it rain 40 inches in 40 days for a fee of $8,000. This time, with memories of the Hatfields flood still echoing in their minds, San Diego councilors refused the offer. So I'll go back and put this link in the show notes. So I just, geoengineering is not new, guys. And a lot of people, hi Daryl, hi Velma, hi Watchman, hi Drops Awake. In any event, it's not new. It's not something that just happened. And most people know of Operation Popeye, which I'm going to bring up next. But I thought it would be really interesting to see the father of all rainmaking. So, guys, I fall down these rabbit holes all the time. And until something ripe comes up, I don't ordinarily, it gets stored in my head. So we'll bring up Operation Popeye, and let me share that with you. And let's see. You guys only get a picture of me because my hair's still tangled up from sleep. I got that little poop. It's tied. Well, it's all in knots. In any event, it's not about that. It's about the information, naturally. That's what I think anyway. So, and this article comes from Wikipedia. Let's make sure I'm in here. Yeah, there we go. So, and this is the one that most people know. So, it's Operation Popeye, Operation Sober Popeye, Project Controlled Weather, Popeye Motor Pool, Intermediary Compatriot, was a military cloud seeding project carried out by the U.S. Air Force during the Vietnam War in 1967 and 1972. The highly classified program attempted to extend the monsoon season over specific areas of the Ho Chi Minh Trail in order to disrupt North Vietnamese military supplies by softening road surfaces and causing landslides. The former U.S. Secretary of Defense, Robert S. McNamara, was aware that there might be objections raised by the international scientific community, but said in a memo to the president that such objections had not in the past been a basis for prevention of military activities considered to be in the interest of the U.S. national security. The chemical weather modification program was conducted from Thailand over Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam, and allegedly sponsored by Secretary of State Henry Kissinger and the CIA without the authorization of then Secretary of Defense Melvin Lord, who had categorically denied to Congress that a program for modification of the weather for use as a tactical weapon even existed. So I'm not going to read all that because most of you guys have heard of Operation Popeye. So I'll leave that link as well. But here's one that not many people hear and not many people even know of. And let me bring that one up. Okay. All right, where is it? Here it is. So, now this one is Operation Cirrus, which many people don't know about. So let's check out what. It's Project Cirrus. I'm sorry, it's not Operation. So, weather modification history. Project Cirrus first hurricane cloud seeding experiment. October 13th, 1947. The energy expended by a tropical hurricane is enough to drive all the machinery in the world for 3 or 4 years. Yet the Army, the Navy, and General Electric Company are collaborating in a daring meteorological experiment, which is to determine whether or not the colossal vortex that we call a hurricane can be broken by making it precipitate the thousands of tons of water that it contains. The cyclone was historically significant in that it was the first tropical cyclone to be modified as a part of a multi-year operation called Project Cirrus. That's CIRRUS, guys. In July 1946, General Electric scientists concluded after experimentations that dry ice seeding could induce heavy rainfall and thus ultimately weaken storms by cooling temperatures in the eye. To undertake Project Cirrus, GE, the United States Army, the Office of Naval Research, and the U.S. Weather Bureau functioned jointly on research and planning early on October 13, 1947. 200 pounds, that's 3,200 ounces of dry ice were dropped throughout the storm, then located about 350 miles east of Jacksonville, Florida. While the appearance of the clouds changed, the initial results of seeding were inconclusive. Shortly after the seeding took place, the hurricane turned sharply toward the southeastern United States. While the leading GE scientists later blamed upon the seeding. Subsequent examination of the environment surrounding storm determined that a large upper-level ridge was in fact responsible for the abrupt turn. Jim Lee is tracking the climate changers, pollution, privacy, and propaganda with over a decade archiving the history of weather modification and geoengineering. All of Jim's work can be reached on Climate Viewer News. There's some references. That wasn't. There should be a link. Let me see. What was it? Project Cirrus Wiki. So on Wikipedia, let me get you guys over there as well. Let's see what Wikipedia has to say about it, because, you know, they are supposed to be a trusted source. Yeah, there's no video on that. So, wait a minute. Well, they actually have a serious, let's see. Anyway, you could find more on that. This is getting a little stuck here. So now we know who does it, where it's from, how it started. And this was just stuff I don't hear a lot of people talk about. And but I dig down. But I have a short video, and hi Velma. Hi Daryl. That if y'all aren't subscribed to this guy, he does a lot on geoengineering, and I'm just gonna borrow his little recent clip from Ian. Okay, I always say Ian. So let me get you guys over there. Okay, yep, it's up here. And it'll share the audio. I'll go ahead and mute mine so you don't have a echo. But for all the naysayers that say, "Oh, it's impossible, it's impossible," they've had 100 years, almost 100 years, over 100 years to perfect it. So if you think, and back, you know, you got to figure, like back in 1914, they didn't have half of what we have now. But I really like what Dane did on his short video. So I want to share it, and I'll pop his link down in the chat room so you guys can go sub to him. He just does a phenomenal job. All right, so let me come back here, mute me out.
Is our weather and our climate being manipulated? Examine the data in this short report. Decide for yourself. Frequency transmission manipulation of hurricanes are patented processes. The technology is not new. The list of weather modification patents numbers into the hundreds and continues to grow. This is Hurricane Ian, passing near the NexRad transmission facility in Key West, Florida. When the transmission facilities are fully energized, they have a repelling effect on any air mass that has been saturated with electrically conductive climate engineering elements. Patents call for such seeding into storms to be carried out from above by jet aircraft. The NexRad transmission network then interacts with the storm air mass, determining where a storm will migrate and where it won't. As Hurricane Ian is allowed to make landfall, the frequency transmission facility in Melbourne, Florida, is fully engaged. This effectively slows Ian's migration inland. The transmissions can diminish precipitation in some regions while augmenting it in others.
It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
Weather modification, climate engineering patent holders like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin do all the weather modeling for the nation's weather forecasting personnel, the National Weather Service and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Both agencies have an illegal federal gag order on their personnel. The scheduled weather forecasting scripts are then passed all the way down to the local meteorologist level. The official narrative must be controlled. All must follow the same script. Is it any wonder that the script readers miraculously know up to a week in advance that a storm like Ian, which was completely unorganized, a mass of convection migrating across the Atlantic, would end up where it did? The same with Hurricane Harvey, Sandy, and so many others. The U.S. military first officially deployed hurricane manipulation operations 75 years ago, Project Cirrus. Disastrous results were reported. In 1962, Project Storm Fury surfaced as a continuation of the U.S. military's hurricane manipulation efforts. During the 1960s, the U.S. military continued to expand its weather warfare efforts and knowledge in Vietnam with Project Popeye, a historical fact of record. So the bottom line question is this: is hurricane manipulation real and ongoing, while illegal gag orders and paid-off politicians are utilized to keep climate intervention operations out of public consciousness? Connect the dots and decide for yourself. Share credible data from a credible source. Make every day count. Time is not on our side. This is Dane Wigington from Geoengineeringwatch.org.
So guys, I'm unmuted, yes. So he also does a really good thing on the fires. And so if y'all, I put the link here in the chat so you can go right back to that. And towards the end, I still haven't watched all of this. I'm having issues with my speaker. So as everyone knows, I'm hearing impaired. So, but I thought it was pretty interesting. And I'm kind of glad I didn't get through to Marfukel last night, simply because, at least here I could go over and read and, put the articles out there. But a lot of people don't know the very beginning. Now, I did learn about Cirrus through Dane, but I also remembered the Rainmaker, that he went up on that tower. Although I thought it was a marina basin, maybe there's something out there on that. But anyway, that is the Father Rainmaker. So guys, that's all I got for you today. And let's see, I'm gonna take you guys out with some Nickelback. Y'all know I never care. They're gonna copyright claim me, but it doesn't matter what I do. They'll copyright claim me anyway. So why isn't this? Okay, gotta stop screen. So let's play a little Nickelback. And the next, I'm working. Actually, funny thing is, I woke up at 5:35 this morning, and all the power was out all over town. You couldn't see anything. So I didn't want to wake anybody up in the house, and but I did. I ended up waking Drop. I'm like, all the power's off. Is it that time? Did an EMP hit? So I walked outside and I grabbed my solar lights. I mean, we've got little lamps all over, battery, and so I'm walking through the house with my little solar lamps. So probably the next video I'm going to do is showing people how to save on their power bills. People over the pond will probably dig it. I believe, it's going to come to America as well. These fools ain't going to stop. They want us gone. We're useless. So in any event, thanks for stopping, guys. We're going to jam out with some Nickelback. How You Remind Me.
Never made it as a wise man. I couldn't cut it as a poor man stealing. Tired of living like a blind man. I'm sick aside without a sense of feeling. And this is how you remind me. This is how you remind me of what I really am. This is how you remind me of what I really am. It's not like you say sorry. I was waiting on a different story. This time I'm mistaken for letting you a heart was breaking. And I've been wrong. I've been down, been to the bottom of every bottle. Stop words in my head. Scream while we haven't fun yet. It's not like you didn't know that. Said I love you and I swear I still do. It must have been so bad. Little women must have damn near killed you. And this is how you remind me of what I really am. This is how you remind me of what I really am. It's not like you say sorry. I was waiting on a different story. This time I'm mistaken for letting you a heart was breaking. And I've been wrong. I've been down into the bottom of every bottle. Stop words in my head. Scream while we having fun, yeah. Yeah, yeah, Never made it as a wise man. Couldn't cut it as a poor man stealing. And this is how you remind me. This is how you remind me. This is how you remind me of what I really am. This is how you remind me of what I really am. It's not like you say sorry. I was waiting on a different story. This time I'm mistaken for handing you a heart worth breaking. And I've been wrong. I've been down, been to the bottom of every bottle. Stop words in my head. Scream while we having fun yet. Having fun yet. Having fun yet. Having fun yet.
Okay, guys, that's a wrap. I usually like to put a little music on at the end too, so everybody can finish chatting. Much love. God bless. Get prepped up and prayed up. I don't think it's looking too good. See you next time.